Welcome to Sicily. We are docking at the Messina Harbor and taking the excursion to Taormina and Mount Etna. We cruise down the Strait of Messina early in the morning so that we get to see the sunrise. Today, our 8.5-hour excursion leaves at 8 a.m. and goes to the quaint town of Taormina, where we get to walk the medieval streets and then go up to the Greek amphitheater. We then reboard the bus and make our way up the flank of Mount Etna, where we get to have lunch. When you enter the harbor, you pass the statue of the Madonna of the Letter, patron saint of the city. In 42 AD, St. Paul came to Messina to spread Christianity. Inspired by his words, the people of Messina sent their ambassador to Jerusalem to pay their respects to the Virgin Mary. The Madonna gave them a letter addressed to the people of Messina, promising them eternal protection to the city. As the bus is heading away from the ship, you get a good view of St. Anthony's Abate Church. This is a relatively modern church built in 1930 to replace several that were destroyed by earthquakes in prior years. You soon pass Palazzo Zonca, a palace built in 1908 to replace the one that had been destroyed by an earthquake. Seems like a common theme. It is now City Hall. Across the street is the Neptune statue. As you leave the city, you enter the Sicilian countryside, which you soon realize is not very flat. Beautiful churches up on the hillside, towns up on the hillside, castles up on the hillside. Then you get beautiful views of the towns below you on the coast. And you notice how the mountains reach down to the water. So it is best to just settle in and enjoy the hour drive to Taormina. When you arrive, you are in a medieval city and first pass the Church of St. Antonio Abate, built in 1330 AD. As you continue strolling down the main street, you pass through the city gates where you are guided through a gauntlet of retail shops for the entire length of Main Street. The buildings have a very historic appearance and atmosphere, but they contain very modern shops. We really enjoyed the local shops, and we bought our Pinocchio Christmas ornaments from a local shop. But we're really puzzled by the large number of high-end retail shops. I don't understand who's going to Taormina to buy a Rolex. If somebody understands that, please put it down in the comments. Taormina has fascinating doors. Not only the doors, but also the ornamentations around them. They are very elaborate, and these details are not to be missed. In addition to stone ornamentation, they have flowers around the doors. They also love to do flowers on the balconies. These flowers tend to drape around and down the balconies. They also take pride in their small stairs that lead up the hill. Some of them can be quite narrow. In many of the store windows, you see ceramic Moor's head pottery. This is a legend that a beautiful girl in Palermo fell in love with a Moor, only to discover he had a wife and child back at home. In a fit of rage, she decapitated him and used his head as a vase for a plant, which grew abundantly, leading neighbors to create their own ceramic heads. And you too can buy a ceramic head in Taormina. As you wander farther into town, you are reminded you are in a very old city. You run across churches that are 13th century and a church from 1486 AD. Modern churches like this are from the 1700s. But then you can go to the edge of the plaza and look over the Straits of Messina and see the timeless beauty of the coast. And back on the street, you pass the clock tower from the 1600s. The art in some of the local shops is very interesting. Continuing down the street, you see the 14th century medieval palace. The medieval palace incorporated an earlier 12th century Norman fortress, which itself was built on Roman foundations. To the left is the Church of Santa Caterina from 1600. We finally make it to the ancient theater of Taormina. This is likely a Roman theater built over a Greek theater, first in the 21st century and then radically reconstructed during the 2nd century AD. An earthquake ripped through the amphitheater in 365 AD. This became an age of obscurity, where burials were made within the building because they didn't even know it was a building. They used this area as a quarry for building materials for both the columns and the block. And it was not until 1465 AD that it was acknowledged as a Roman building. And it was not until the mid-18th century that renovation and restoration actually began. This was a fabulous place to climb up to the high balcony and look down upon the stage with the city as a backdrop. The vista was spectacular, with the reddish-brown of the man-made structure contrasting with the blues and whites of nature. Climbing down, we enjoyed getting our pictures by this ancient structure, finding something older than we are. Leaving the Roman amphitheater, we looked up to see the Taormina Castle and Church, surprisingly, up on a hillside. After hiking up to the ancient ruins, we decided we had earned the right to have a gelato cannoli. We had not seen it before in any town, but when we came across this little shop, we were intrigued. We got 2 cannelloni and split them because they were so huge, and it was well worth the calories. We boarded the bus and headed to Mount Etna. Along the way, we continued to get fabulous views. A cute little coastal town, St. Peter's Church in Carrabba dominated the town center. A little further, and we entered the Mount Etna area and began the climb. We had foggy landscape views up most of the way as we climbed the flank, but we finally made it above the clouds and received expansive views of lava fields as far as the eye could see. Some of them quite old, with a lot of vegetation, some of them quite new, with no living things visible. The winding road finally led us to our restaurant. As we headed into lunch, we were wondering, when is Mount Etna going to erupt again? The last big eruption was in the 1990s. Some people have asked, what was the most memorable part of our lunch? The only parts we took photos of were the house wine that we enjoyed and the cannelloni. We had time after lunch to survey the area. There's not much vegetation around the restaurant, so recent eruptions have occurred. Looking down the flank of Mount Etna, you see the bare lava fields, but notice the grass is starting to recover a little bit further down. As you look up the hills, you first see the cinder cones and finally up to the volcanic cone. There's definitely not much vegetation up there. It looks out of this world, but the colors are beautiful with the blacks and the reds. We had our opportunity to walk on the cinder cone, which luckily had not had lava in it since the 1890s, so we felt fairly safe. But it was just an extraordinary opportunity being able to walk around an active volcano. Then it was time to reboard the bus and return to our ship. Right across from the ship was the Madonna of the Letter monument, which sits on an active fort, which was interesting to look down on. As we sailed out, we got to see the square lighthouse and enjoyed watching the shore as we left to now go visit Crete. The Greek poet Homer said that the Strait of Messina contained two sea monsters, so we looked out our cabins hoping to catch a glimpse of at least one of them.